Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgy kind of content, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description. And a big shout out to everyone who comments on our videos and likes and shares us. We love you guys and really appreciate everything you've done for us. And we love to hear stories about your experiences playing the game. It's really one of the best things about having this channel. With all that out of the way, we're going to jump into this week's video. We're talking about the Whispered One, Vecna. So before we jump right into Vecna, we're going to do a three-part kind of series where we're going to do Vecna, Aberrant, and Kas. And all of them kind of come together. So we will get into them as we will be touching upon them throughout this video. So, that being said, those of you may not know, but Vecna is one of the most popular villains in Dungeons and Dragons, as he has occurred in multiple different iterations throughout the different editions, and has just recently come out with Vecna Eve of Ruin, which is the newest module incorporating him. He is a very cool character, and he has gotten a lot of additional fame due to Stranger Things, using his namesake in regards to the villain in the last season. So, that being said, before we jump into the actual history of Vecna, we're going to talk about two of the most prolific items in regards to him, the eye and the hand of Vecna. Now, how these items came to be, we will discuss throughout the video. But I just want to tell you that these items can be found together or separately randomly in the world, depending on how you're in the circumstance to get them. They are, in fact, the eye and hand of Vecna's human body that has been severed from him. And in order to attune to these items, you must remove the item from yourself. So, in order to attune the eye, you must gouge out your own eye. In order to attune to the hand, you must chop off your left hand at the wrist and then press your newly created stump to the hand and allow the hand to graft itself onto you. And if the hand or the eye are ever removed from your body, your character dies. Period. These are serious, high-end items. When you attune to the eye, you have true sight, which means you can see through anything that might be shape-shifting or using magic to hide its appearance. You could see invisible creatures. You can use an action to see as if you were wearing a ring of X-ray vision, and you can end the effect as a bonus action. The eye also has 8 charges, and you can use an action to expend 1 or more charges to cast one of the following spells with a DC 18 save. 1 is Clairvoyance, 1 is Crown of Madness, 1 is Disintegrate, 1 is Dominate Monster, and the other one is Eye Bite, all with varying charges respectively. The eye regains 1d4 plus 4 expended charges daily at dawn, and each time you cast a spell from an eye, there's a 5% chance that Vecna tears your soul from your body and devours it, and then takes control of the body like a puppet. If that happens, you become an NPC under the DM's control. Right there. Absolutely, this is an item I want so badly. I mean, if you could just give me a weapon and a couple of cantrips, this could be a whole character as far as I'm concerned. It is so cool that you get to have a chance to have your soul torn out. And some of these are very strong spells. Disintegrate is a strong spell. Dominate Monster is a strong spell. Eye Bite is a strong spell. That is awesome. And the risk makes it so much better. Now the hand of Vecna changes your strength score to 20 unless it is already 20 or higher. Any melee attack you make with the hand, any melee weapon attack made with the hand with a weapon held by it deals an extra 2d8 cold damage on a hit. And the hand has 8 charges. You can use an action to spend 1 or more charges to cast the following spells. Again, DC is 18. One of them is Finger of Death, Sleep, Slow, or Teleport. The hand regains 1d4 plus 4 expended charges daily at dawn, and each time you cast the spell from the hand, it casts the suggestion spell on you, demanding that you commit an evil act. The hand might have a specific act in mind, or leave it up to you. Attuning to any of these items changes your alignment to neutral evil, which is awesome on top of it. So if you were a lawful good person, somehow you end up getting attuned, which you can get attuned against your will, would permanently change your alignment. That is very, very, very cool. Also, if you happen to attune to both the hand and the eye, you gain additional benefits. First off, you become immune to disease or poison. Using the eye's X-rays vision never causes you to suffer exhaustion. You experience premonitions of danger unless you are incapacitated. Can't be surprised. If you start your turn with at least 1 hit point, you regain 1d10 hit points. If a creature has a skeleton, you could attempt to turn its bones to jelly with a touch of the hand of Vecna. You do so by using your action to make a melee attack against the creature you can reach, using your choice of melee attack bonus for weapons or spells. On a hit, the target must succeed on a DC 18 Constitution saving throw or drop to 0 hit points. Also, you can use an action to cast Wish. This property can't be used again until 30 days have passed. Vecna's history. A lot of it before he became a lich is just eradicated. And I think this has to do in part with the fact that Vecna covets secrets. He believes that secrets are the secret to controlling power, controlling individuals, and manipulating them for his personal gain. That being said, what we do know about his life before he became a lich is very, very little. We start out on Orth. Orth is the plane that existed for the world of Greyhawk. That's their Toril. That's the planet that your characters all take place on. In that planet, or that Orth, he came from a place called Flan. And Flan is home to people that were naturally gifted with magic. They had a natural affinity to it. Now, in the text, it has him listed as either a human or a half-elf. They can't depict which one he was. I don't think this is necessarily as important as the fact that his mother, who was described in Vecna's own words as wholly an evil person, would sacrifice and deliberately kill animals in order to consort with monstrous beings. And it's her cruelty that helps shape Vecna into the man he is, and is in his undeath. Vecna himself grew in power as he was just devout in his hunger for more power and secrets and hidden things. So what he would do is he would covet all this magical intrigue and knowledge and everything and use it to bolster his own power. At some point, after the death of his actual mother, Vecna started to realize the horrible part of life is that it's limited. And Vecna began to fear for his own mortality. Now, the most popular theory, and the one that I believe is the correct one, is that Orcus taught Vecna how to achieve undeath and taught him what he needed to do in order to become a lich. Now, there's other rumors that Vecna experimented on hundreds of innocent mortals in order to form a ritual to absorb power from the various planes of existence in order to channel it into his own decrepit body. And the third is that Vecna learned secrets of lichdom from a being known as the Serpent, which people at that time believed to be the personification of magic itself. I don't think these are necessarily not connected. Because again, Orcus doesn't grant spells. Orcus grants his followers the availability to channel the negative energy plane into themselves, which sounds a lot like how to absorb power from the various planes of existence. Experimenting in order to get it right just sounds like it makes a lot of sense. And to have a jumping off point, I can see Orcus doing that. Because the more undeath in the world, the quicker he achieves his goal. So, I do believe personally that Vecna was taught directly by Orcus how to achieve undeath. And I do think all of those things are combined. In regards to the serpent has to do ultimately with the Yuan-Ti and the Yuan-Ti's chief deities. I believe the serpent is an avatar of Mercer, but I'm not exactly sure, and I can't really go down that rabbit hole as there's not really much information about the serpent, just that the serpent is believed to be this powerful magical entity. So once Vecna had achieved his undeath, he spent the rest of his time for about 1,000 years growing his own magical power, growing an army of the undead, creating spellcasters that were loyal to him. At this point, he had created the Sword of Kas and bestowed it upon what he believed to be his lieutenant and someone that he could trust. The Sword of Kas on its own is a very powerful artifact. The text for it reads as follows. When Vecna grew in power, he appointed an evil and ruthless lieutenant, Kas the Bloody-Handed, to act as his bodyguard and right hand. The despicable villain served as an advisor, warlord, and assassin. His success earned him Vecna's admiration and a reward, a sword with a dark pedigree as the man who would wield it. For a long time, Kas faithfully served the Lich, but as Kas's powers grew, so did his hubris. The sword urged him to supplant Vecna, so they could rule the Lich's empire in Vecna's stead. Legend says that Vecna's destruction came by Kas's hand, but Vecna also wrought his rebellious lieutenant's doom, leaving only Kas's sword behind. The world was made brighter thereby. So, just so that we can kind of understand what the Sword of Kas does, because this is an awesome item as well. It is a sentient longsword that grants a +3 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with it. It scores a critical hit on a roll of 19 or 20 and deals an extra 2d10 slashing damage to the undead. If the sword isn't bathed in blood within 1 minute of being drawn from its scabbard, the wielder must make a DC 15 charisma saving throw. On a successful save, the wielder takes 3d6 damage. On a failed save, the wielder is dominated by the sword, as if by the dominant monster spell, and the sword demands that it be bathed in blood. The spell effect ends when the sword's demands is met. It does gain some random properties, just like the eye and the hand and all artifacts do. But understand, the sword has its own abilities as well. It has the Spirit of Kas. While the sword is on your person, you add a d10 to your initiative at the start of every combat. In addition, when you use an attack action with the sword, you can transfer some or all of its attack bonuses to your armor class instead. The adjusted bonuses remain in effect until the start of your next turn. So you can take that +3 away and just add +3 to your armor. While the sword is on your person, you can use An action to cast one of the following spells with a spell save of DC 18. Call Lightning, Divine Word, or Finger of Death. Once you use the sword to cast a spell, you can't cast that spell again from it until the next dawn. The Sword of Kas is a sentient, chaotic, evil weapon with an intelligence of 15, a wisdom of 13, and a charisma of 16. Excuse me. It has hearing and dark vision out to a range of 120 feet. The weapon communicates telepathically with its wielder and can speak, read, and understand Common. The sword's purpose is to bring ruin to Vecna, killing Vecna's worshippers, destroying the Lich's works, and foiling his machinations. All help to fulfill this goal. The Sword of Kas also seeks to destroy anyone corrupted by the hand and eye of Vecna. The sword's obsession with those artifacts eventually becomes a fixation of its wielder. And the only way to destroy the sword is to be attuned to both the eye and hand of Vecna and use the wish property to destroy the Sword of Kas. But it becomes a charisma check contested by the other charisma check between the sword and the caster. And if the sword wins, it is not destroyed. Now, Vecna created the Sword of Kas for the actual Kas, the Bloody-Handed. Kas was just a regular man for a long period of time in his life. But he was vicious, cruel, and very successful. So, Kas earned that position to become Vecna's right-hand man. Vecna saw a great amount of potential in Kas, and that's why he forged the Sword of Kas, because he should have a weapon that shows he is bound to Vecna, that he is able to speak on behalf of Vecna, and any of his words would be able to be enforced and backed by Vecna to expand his authority when he wasn't around. The problem was, the sword now hates Vecna, but the sword is imbued with portions of Vecna, which is what makes it so powerful. The sword got the power of Vecna in a small fraction, but his thirst and hunger for power is what dominates the sword. The sword is chaotic evil. It really only cares about growing and becoming stronger. The Sword of Kas ends up corrupting Kas, which ends up helping to set the stage for Vecna's demise on the mortal world. But this comes in two parts, because it's not only Kas that helps to cause this issue and to really ruin Vecna's available future, because the sword convinces Kas to want to take over what Vecna's doing, and what Vecna's doing at this point is conquering lands and building a kingdom by using undead and other spellcasters that Vecna has taught and has forged their loyalty, most likely through the use of abusing their secrets or knowing their secrets and fostering that truth to manipulate them to stay at his side. But one of this higher spellcasters, named Aberrant, is also part of the downfall of Vecna. Well, not to get too much into Aberrant, because we will cover Aberrant in his own video, but Aberrant is the result of a Balor and a human. The story goes that the human summoned the Balor and was incapable of controlling him. That Balor then took advantage of the human, murdered him, and then found a woman and then impregnated that woman. That woman ended up being Aberrant's mother. Aberrant then goes through a very difficult life and eventually finds himself in the presence of Vecna, while Vecna had conquered a city and was walking through the remnants of it. Aberrant being a cambion, which is kind of like a tiefling, but like with wings and way scarier. Vecna saw potential in this child and took a Sirak, and took a Sirak under his wing and taught a Sirak. As they were attacking a town of Phalor, Vecna ends up being hit by a very powerful spell of like radiant light, and ends up scarring his face. But a Sirak is there, and the reason why Vecna survives is because of a Sirak. After this attack, a Sirak gains prestige and is favored by Vecna, as obviously a Sirak saved his life. And a Sirak gains prominence and position and new knowledge and a better platform for his tutelage and growth and power. It is later revealed that a Sirak set up this ambush deliberately so he could save Vecna's life. And the reason why this is so important is because at this time, Kas had come into power. Kas had proven himself. And the Sword of Kas also heard that Vecna had gotten wounded. And this was the opportunity that the sword took to force Kas to make his move. Now this all happens in Vecna Lives in the 1990 campaign. So, at this point, a Sirak had helped show that Vecna can be wounded. The Sword of Kas grows hunger from that availability for Vecna to be wounded. So Kas attacks Vecna. This happens in Vecna's rotted tower. This combat that occurred between the two of them is how the eye and the hand of Vecna end up getting separated from Vecna's body. At this point, Vecna had still had his human body. Obviously had been desiccated and turned to lichdom, which is why it all looks all decrepit and mummified and dried out. But during this fight, Kas is said to have removed his eye and his hand. But nobody else was there. But as this fight happened, a massive explosion destroyed the tower and shook the following lands. It is said that at this point, Vecna had banished Kas to the realm of Cavitus, which is in the domains of Dread, but not in time to avoid his own destruction. So the only things that were left after this fight, again, is the hand and the eye of Vecna. But Vecna's spirit endured, and languishing across the plains and slowly gathering power from survivors of his cult. Because as he grew in power and conquered almost the entire Orith at this time, people began worshipping him. So his name continued to instill fear in mortals, and it is said through his eponymous artifacts, his evil continued to corrupt others. They are said that small pieces of his withered remains were scattered across existence, and anyone who touched them got corrupted. So centuries go by, and Vecna is still amassing followers and worshippers. And strong, powerful wizards want to follow in his footsteps. This widespread belief and worship of Vecna elevates him to the status of demigod. And he was accepted among the most corrupt powers of the astral sea. So he ends up coming back. He ends up manifesting himself back into a new form. It still looks like his old form, kind of. He does not have a hand on his left hand, and he is still missing an eye. In this form, he crafts his rib cage in a very specific manner, so that way he can keep the original copy of the Book of Vile Darkness inside of his ribcage. Now, there are many copies of this book in existence, but the original is said to be penned by Vecna himself, or at least mostly penned by him. That version is carried on Vecna, or really in Vecna, at all times. So as he formed himself, he really began to hunger for more power, to become more than a demigod, to become a higher god. Vecna also ends up being, it turns out he was banished to Cavitus, which is one of the domains of dread. And he attempted to ascend into full deity status, and this is what banishes him to Cavitus, because he was just previously in the astral sea, and he tries to kind of force himself to become a god. He fails, and as a result, he's banished to Cavitus. When he's banished there, his eruption into that land frees Kas, who had been banished there since their original fight. So for over centuries, Kas had been there, absorbing negative energy and becoming even more powerful. He becomes Lord of Tovag, which is the name of the cities and the countries there. And that name comes from originally Oreth being drawn into the domain of dread. And the two realms forming the domain of dread is known as the Burning Peaks. That has to do with the part of it that borders Oreth and the actual part of the domain of dread kind of almost overlapping. And they call that the Burning Peaks. So in his time within a domain of dread known as the Burning Peaks, Vecna again attempts to become a greater deity and no longer be a demigod. So he plots over centuries to absorb the essence of a demigod named Luz, and also plans to invade Sigil, for where he could exert control over the entire multiverse. Now, in Sigil is a city of doors. The city of doors is kind of like the infinite corridor. Like it's literally a way to go across the entire universe, the entire multiverse. Now, the Lady of Pain lives here. And Lady of Pain is no joke. We'll talk about her later, but she is not someone you want to mess with. As Vecna actually successfully, and being the only deity ever to successfully break in to Sigil and the City of Doors, he was thwarted. And this is from Vecna Dies Again. This is his second coming. I think this is Die Vecna Die, actually. But he had achieved his goal of absorbing the demigod Luz. So he, by help from the Lady of Pain, they tear Luz from the essence of Vecna. They basically just tear out a big portion of his body, of his soul, kind of. But somehow Vecna manages to still be no longer a demigod, but a lesser deity. So you're a god, you're just not as strong as the major gods. But he managed to retain that strength. And that is where Vecna kind of exists after that. He's a lesser deity because he survived them tearing out the essence of another god from him after he invaded the City of Doors, which is something that no other deity has successfully done or will ever be able to do. So right now, Vecna lives in the Shadowfell, and he covets the Raven Queen because she has knowledge that no one else does, and he wants that knowledge. There's a lot of truth there and secrets, and he is now the god of secrets. He's a major thorn in the side of Orcus because also he is undead, and he is taking away from people that would worship Orcus because they have now begun to worship Vecna, because Vecna has done serious damage throughout the world, throughout the multiverse, and in the realm of the gods. Vecna has forged his own path to divinity and is patient, intelligent, and ruthless. So he is at currently the moment where he is piecing together his plans to take out the Raven Queen and take her portfolio, which would push him into being a greater deity. And then when he's at that point, he could do whatever he wants. He could go and start fighting his way through the abyss to get to Orcus if he so deemed it necessary. Vecna is way more dangerous than most people really understand. He's unkillable. He is a deity. As long as people worship him, he will be back. Being undead, being a lich, being capable of the atrocities in order to become a lich, conquering almost the entire continent, the entire planet of Earth during his time, and creating some of the most dangerous villains in the wake of his adventures. Aberrant is a nightmare of treachery and suffering that he just lays waste to the world and to the multiverse. It is incredible that one man could do all of this. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. Definitely give me anything you've got about your experiences with Vecna, running any of those old school module or even the new one, Vecna Eve of Ruin. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about Aberrant or Kas, if you happen to like them. Let me know if you've ever gotten the awesome experience to use the eye or the hand of Vecna. That stuff is amazing, and I want to hear how those stories played out. Big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And a big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failures, who we are part of a live stream game every Wednesday night. The link to both of those is in the description, and thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.